It's also pre-debit card.
Pre-debit card.
I'm old, dude. I'm old.
Pre-debit, that blows my mind.
This is the One Step Better podcast. Helping small businesses make wins each and every week.
I have a good question for you today, Mike.
It's scary. I'll give you an answer. I don't know if it's going to be a good one.
How old were you? And how much was your limit on the first credit card you got?
Oh, goodness. I was probably 18 years old. I got a, what was Jennifer Garner does the ads. And
Capital One?
Capital One. Yeah, it was a Capital One credit card. I think my limit was like $700, maybe $600.
And you must have had really good credit compared to me. I'll tell you mine in a second.
I remember being extremely frustrated because I was a responsible adult at 18 years old, and I had a job, and I made money, and I could pay my bills because I never carried a balance on the credit card for, the first however long I had it. And my girlfriend at the time, no, I'd pay it off because I was a responsible adult. And my girlfriend at the time was not that. And she carried a balance and would pay minimums and all that stuff. And her credit limit was like 5 times mine. And I was like, why can't I have a higher credit limit? Thankfully, looking back, having a higher credit limit would have gotten me into significant trouble. But I think it was like $600-700.
So I got my first credit card the day I went and bought books at the college bookstore. My parents said, it'd be great for you to have this for emergencies.
Yeah. Thanks, parents.
Thanks, parents. I got a GM MasterCard, $300 limit. I could do a lot with an emergency with $300.
Yeah, that'll buy you like an Xbox.
Not an Xbox, but there may have been a lot of late night food purchases that were emergencies. Very much a high number of late night.
Hey, Dad, it's an emergency. I got to get to Kroger.
This is also pre-debit card. Yeah. So I'm either writing a check or having cash. And my mom and dad, only way they could really get me money at that time, because I lived far enough away that
pre-debit card.
I'm old, dude. I'm old.
Pre-debit, that blows my mind.
Yeah, no debit cards yet.
Wow.
Mandy had a debit card. I met her 2 years later. First Tennessee had just come out with them, and she had one. I was like, that thing's like wizard.
Yeah, and then you look at your bank account. It's like, oh, kill the wizard.
That money comes right on my bank account. That's not a good deal at all.
I thought you sent me a bill.
Yeah, no kidding. Anyway, so I had $300 limit, and it was always maxed out with either not even fast food, like Waffle House took your credit card at that point. And
I thought Waffle House was cash only, man.
No, Papa John's took your credit card.
Everybody.
We were good. Pizza, I could get pizza anytime.
Man, I use my credit card for just so dumb things. Like I didn't have money in the bank, so that's what the credit card was for. And it was just like, yeah, I can afford that, and I couldn't. But my credit card could. I can make monthly payments on that for 30 years. Like
I used a credit card to pay for my honeymoon.
Dumb decisions, man.
Yeah. About $6 or $7 grand that I probably took 5 years to pay off.
Yeah.
At 20% interest. But
it was a good time.
We had a great honeymoon. It was fun. We would see the cool places.
So today we are continuing our conversations on the mistakes that small businesses make.
People make.
That people make. This one is a little bit more broad, no doubt. And one of those mistakes is carrying what we're going to call bad debt. And this is going to be a fun conversation because I don't know if you guys know Matt and I personally at all. You know that Matt and I have different takes or different philosophies, different approaches to debt, and so it'll be a fun conversation. You'll get to hear a couple of sides from the same story, different approaches. But let's first define bad debt. When we say that a mistake that a business owner, or even maybe somebody personally, is going to make is carrying bad debt, how do you define bad debt?
Debt that's not purchasing assets, not purchasing.
So that's the I'm going to go buy an Xbox on my credit card.
Well, it depends. Am I going to work on the Xbox, get really good and be a gamer and make some money on the internet? Maybe it is an investment.
There you go.
So you got to flip it around. Everything's an asset. An investment is an asset, right? Yeah. No, it's basically using debt for non-appreciating assets is what I would say. Now, that can be as much as, using debt to invest in college. And that does happen still quite a bit. And knowing that it is an investment of an asset of my education, that is the asset you're purchasing there. But I look at debt a little differently than you do. I think it is a tool to leverage your ability to purchase and invest in future assets and appreciable assets. And I think that's perfectly fine. You still want to do the arbitrage of the rate, make sure you're not spending too much money, and the rate of return would be different than the investment that you're making.
Yeah.
But I'm okay with some debt. Yeah.
And in your perspective, maybe bad debt could be, hey, I got two loan options. One is better terms, better rate, whatever it may be, and then saying no, screw that, I'm going to go pick this other one because of X, Y, Z. There's more to it than just what am I buying, but how am I buying it matters.
Yeah, I mean, I have a line of credit in my business, right, where I think is a reasonable rate. I've got really good terms. I don't feel like they're the payback of cash is too fast that I can't cash flow that debt. We see a lot of times a client of ours, they'll go get a loan attached to their point of sale, which is a daily payback of sales with a 90-day payback term, and they basically max that thing out. And then they're wondering why their cash flow is tight. I'm like, because you're paying basically a rate of 50% in interest and on a fast term of payback. So not only do they get you in the rate, they also got you on the payback terms. And that happens a lot when we see a client that really gets cash strapped and they don't really have any places to go and they didn't have a plan attached to it. But likewise, if I have a note on my building here that we own a building, we have debt on it. It's, we are not anywhere near paying it off, but we have quite a bit of equity in it. I'm not in a hurry to pay down that debt today when the rate's at 3.5 or whatever it is. And the general market, I can get guaranteed funds at 4.5 or 5. That makes sense to me. I'm okay with that spread right now. Now, if rates were to go, if it would have been at 10 or 11, I'm probably going to look to get rid of that debt and pay down that debt faster. So I think there's what I call good and bad debt.
Yeah, and just for table stakes and kind of knowing or different approaches I would say that all debt is bad debt. Now this is a personal issue for me. This is not, we can be friends. I'm not a,
you have taken the Dave Ramsey Kool-Aid. You have the tattoo and the brand. You're good.
I don't push my personal beliefs onto others about debt. And so it's not like I'm not even, at least I don't think I'm even super vocal about it for other people. For us personally, we've chosen that route. I've had debt almost my entire life of, as an adult, whether it's credit cards, car notes, or, houses, or whatever it is, I've always had some level of debt, but my goal is always to not have debt. And so when I say, all debt is bad debt, doesn't necessarily mean that I don't ever carry debt. It just means that my goal is always to get rid of it as fast as I possibly can. And the reason for that is simply because debt sucks cash flow. My biggest...
And freedom.
Yes, correct. All of it goes back to freedom and choices, right? If I don't owe anybody anything in the world, then my options open up drastically on what I can do. Let's say that I don't owe anybody in the world anything right now, and you and I have a big, let's get in a fight. I can walk out of a job and a lot more freedom to do that than if I had, I got a mortgage payment or a car note payment or a student loans payment or whatever coming up next week and I don't have any cash in the bank. All right, so it just gives options, it gives freedom. But also it opens up your largest wealth building tool, which is your income, to be able to do the things that you want to do with it, whether that's investing in your future or buying things now, whatever it looks like. And so that's my approach to debt is I try not to have debt at all times, simply for the freedom and options that it brings.
You are personally debt free right now.
Correct. Yep.
That's pretty amazing, dude.
Yep.
Congrats.
And it's it's something that we've worked on for a long time.
Am not.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have no bad debts, but I have quite a bit of debt.
Yeah. And I think that there is a component of debt that people are comfortable with and okay with. And I'm not even mad at that until it gets extreme comfortability where it's almost an expectation that I have to have a car note or I have to carry a credit card balance or whatever it is, and they feel trapped by that. That's the stuff that irritates me more than, hey, you know what? I'm going to go buy this building and it's going to have a mortgage on it or it's going to have a loan on it. But ultimately we're going to use this to to grow this company out of. And so I'm not like hardcore, I'm going to, pound somebody because they carry debt. But I do think that there's some wisdom in getting rid of it as fast as you can so that your options open up in the future. A lot of the debt that we see, the businesses that we work with carry, are typically some type of strategic debt. It may be I'm going to go get a small business loan in order to start my company. It may be I'm going to go get a loan in order to replace the equipment in my building, or even I got to buy a building, or I'm going to go buy a business, or buy a restaurant, buy a book of business, whatever it is. And to your point, there can be some strategy around leveraging that in order to generate future cash flow.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so I would say that, the number one thing we see is people, getting in debt to buy the business. That's probably the number one. Number two is definitely some type of equipment in their practice or their business. It could be a vehicle. It could be a machine. They're a large ticket purchase that they need to have to operate their business and generate cash. I don't have a problem with those things usually. We talk through, we do if they're going to lease that piece of equipment and then the penny buyout or a dollar buyout, we'll do all the math on there and see what makes sense from a cash flow standpoint. But we do have that conversation regularly. The downside stuff is when they think debt is just a tool to get them over the hump. Hey, I'm not as profitable as I should be, so I'm going to go borrow some money to get me over there. Well, that's a bigger eye-opening awakening for me. Like, you're not cash flowing your business to operate at a profit.
And that may be I'm using debt as a Band-Aid. One of the earlier episodes we talked about short-term versus long-term thinking. I'm using debt as a Band-Aid to maybe make payroll this week, or to get to service my debt this month, without thinking what is the bigger picture here of what is causing me to actually need to go get a loan in order to cover those things.
Yep. I have a client that I think about, it happened probably 10 years ago. He owned a business. It was a profitable business. He's probably making $100,000 a year, but he personally was taking out probably $160,000 a year. Yeah. By the time he figured taxes and what he was living on and all this stuff. Because
that's not good math.
Before he opened his business, he was making $150,000-$60,000 a year and working for somebody else, opened his own business, and it wasn't that profitable yet. And he was perfectly fine with the idea of, I will borrow today to eventually get my profit up. And eventually I'll make more money that I can pay that debt back down. He was in a perpetual cycle, because then when his income went up, he now took $200,000 out when he was making $150,000, and he was taking $250,000 out when he was making $200,000, and that was a constant cycle. He was mentally okay with borrowing money to pay for a lifestyle.
Yeah.
That's not good debt. That's a bad debt.
And ultimately that catches up with you.
Yeah. One bad month, and you never get on the flip side of it.
Got questions about how to run your business better? Join Works and Patrick Accounting for office hours. Every month on Thursday, several of our staff host open discussion Zoom meetings to share tips on business best practices, as well as answer any questions you have about their topic. We talk about QuickBooks tips and tricks, how to understand your insurance policies, employee onboarding, and the list goes on and on and on. Don't miss your opportunity to engage in the conversation and come away with some business tips. Register today at works.com/office hours. That's WHIRKS.com/office hours. Can't wait to see you there. And as a business owner, one of the things you have to watch out for is the risk that you're putting your family at the cost of the business. It's not necessarily a good idea to go get a big old HELOC to fund something in my business. And next thing you know, maybe something happens, a pandemic happens, whatever. My business is failing. Now I've lost my house. Yeah. And so there's a lot more to think about, because here's the deal. Entrepreneurs, as a generalization, are optimistic people. They believe in what they're doing. They believe what they're doing is going to win. And that is awesome. And I would always want that to be true. And at some point, you have to put the reality glasses on to say, is this decision the best decision? I'll give you an example. Let's say that I'm going to, I've grown to the point where it's now time to add another truck to my fleet, right? I can go out and buy a $100,000 truck brand new from the dealer and get that and put that in my fleet and we're good to go. Or maybe I could go get a $50,000 used truck that's going to service the stuff. Maybe I'm an HVAC technician, whatever it is, just as well as that new truck is. Well, if I'm talking about going to get a loan for $100K versus going to get a loan of $50K, or maybe even be able to cash flow that $50K, well, that's a decision that you can really start to think about from the standpoint of
but I'm going to get
avoiding
this
bad
massive
debt.
tax deduction for the big car I buy. This is the most common thing in two main industries I see all the time. Lawn care guys, pulling a bunch of lawnmowers, and a $75,000 dually, because they needed a tax deduction.
My rig is probably worth $250,000 to go cut yards for $75 a pop.
Correct. And the other one is anybody in the construction business.
Yeah,
they're going to get their trucks beat to hell on every construction site carrying crap in it, but they're going to go buy the biggest, most expensive truck because they're going to be able to deduct that truck.
And because everybody at the job site says, ooh,
you got a really cool Denali pickup truck that costs $110,000 for you. Here, let me throw this 4x4 in the back of it and beat the shit out of it.
Yeah,
exactly. And so that is a common thing. I see a lot. We closed on a little small property yesterday, and the guy's like, they still got that rule for writing off a $6,000 car, 6,000 pound car. And I'm like, yep, $25,000. He goes, cool, I need a new car.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, that's a good idea. If you need a new car, that's fine. You're going to buy it anyway. That's great.
Yeah.
If you already can afford that, that's fine. So you're just going to think through the whole decision matrix.
Making decisions about buying things and especially using debt to buy things for your business that you don't actually need for your business, but because of a tax answer, is a really poor way to operate. If you need equipment, if you need to make that purchase, if it's something that has a business use and like it's something that you actually need to continue to operate or grow, then make that decision based on that. The timing of when you buy that may affect some things tax-wise, but I'm not going to go buy a big old front-end loader simply because, hey, it's December and I don't want to pay Uncle Sam.
So we'll steal from Dave Ramsey a little bit here. Dave Ramsey says there's these baby steps you kind of put yourself through. What are some of the steps you need to take on the small business side to kind of stop the bleeding, first of all, and create a new plan of action?
I think the first thing you have to do is understand cash flow. You have to understand the levers that actually impact your ability to generate money. And once you have a good understanding of that, then you can make smart purchasing decisions. All right, it's time to buy a new piece of equipment. It's time to maybe expand our operations. Maybe it's time to make new hires. So then that's allowing you to make strategic business decisions. What you're doing in those individual business decisions is maybe what's going to generate a need for a conversation about debt. So I've already identified that one, cash flow can support the need to hire this new person, but I know that I have an outlay of cash over the next 6 months to get that person up to snuff on what their job is going to do, and that's going to cost me maybe, let's call it $50,000. Well, now I have a need for $50,000. Can I cash flow that out of my revenue, or maybe do I need some supplemental dollars? What is that going to look like? That's where that decision comes into place. Same thing with equipment. Same thing, with all the decisions that you're going to make. It starts with, can I support this position long term? And if so, how am I going to get there? Bridge the gap, short term to long term. So I think that's one. You have to understand cash flow. I also think it's really smart to grow your business at a manageable pace. You see all of the stories on whether it's watching Shark Tank or hearing venture capitalists come in, or big investments and Series A funding and all this stuff in the tech world, and that's all the shiny object that's really sexy and cool. And man, how awesome would it be to raise $300 million? But at the end of the day, let's say that you went out and raised a bunch of funds, or you went to the bank and your lender is like, yeah, I'll give you some more money because you're going to pay me a lot more in return. At the end of the day, there's that changes how you operate your business. If you have a big old stack of cash, and especially if it's borrowed cash, you're going to make decisions differently. I'm going to make a different decision if I have to grow my business organically out of the cash flow that it's producing and the retained earnings that's coming in over the course of time than I am if I have a big old stack of dollar bills sitting on the table. I'm going to be smarter about the decisions that I'm going to make. I'm going to slow down my decision making, and I'm going to grow at a more manageable pace because having the cash is just one step of that. I also have to do all of the things that is going to generate that ongoing dollar of cash going forward. And sometimes if I have a big old pile of cash, I'm going to make bad decisions, quick decisions without thinking through things and operationally long term, how that's going to impact my overall strategy. So, I mean, those are a couple of things I think of.
I immediately think through, just like Ramsey would say, I start with having a plan for my money. I need to know what the cash flow looks like. I want to have a plan for the cash that's coming in and know exactly where it's going. Mm-hmm. I want to have a budget. I'll say budget, basically pen to paper. Here's where the money's coming in. Here's where the money's going out. Here's what I need to live on personally. Here's what I'm taking home now. Here's all the things I have to spend. And then I start to figure out where my game plan is. That could be a profit first method where you basically, because I see a lot of people borrow money to pay taxes because they haven't planned for them, or they borrow money for that next piece of equipment because they haven't planned for it. And so having a plan for the money that's coming in starts as step one. Having a good allocation of where you want to put those funds to use, understanding what you're trying to live in. Like, so if I'm on a profit first method and I want to make 20% profit, I know that I have to work backwards from that, and that leaves an X percentage that I got for operations. Well, then I have to start making decisions off of, this is only pool of money I'm allowed to use. Yeah. It's the same as the envelope method for Ramsey. It's the same as creating a budget and doing a budget to actual report. It's no different in logic, but I have to have a plan for where I'm spending the money. From there, I can then start thinking both short-term and long-term decision-making of, I know I'm going to need a piece of equipment in 2 years, or, hey, I know we're going to add another person coming up. I need to start putting some money aside. So I have to start pre-cash flowing the money I'm going to spend before, so I don't get myself having to borrow money on operations. We do not spend money on operations here. We don't borrow debt money for operations. We do have debt today tied to either large ticket purchases for future assets or technology spends. Usually is where we kind of see some of our big spends because they're unplanned. We decide to buy something at a time.
An opportunity pops up, and hey, let's go ahead and pull the trigger on that.
We do not have any acquisition debt. Well, that's not true. I have a little bit of acquisition debt left over from when I purchased a firm a couple of years ago at a moderate interest rate, and I could pay it off, but I don't really want to because that's more of a desire not to want to pay it off. It's cash flowing.
And that's looking at the overall picture of going back to, it's the plan. I have $1 of cash. I need to plan what I'm going to do with that $1 of cash before it comes into the bank.
Correct. So I think, as you're thinking through the debt that you're in, I think a lot of us are living, this is a fire drill problem usually. I had to do something today. Either I couldn't make payroll, so I went and borrowed money, or I had taxes due and I went and borrowed money, or I was going to have a tax bill, so I went and borrowed money to buy a car as opposed to putting the money for taxes. Those are some of the common ones. It's because you really didn't have a plan where the money was going to go in the beginning, and you didn't have a plan of attack for how you're going to handle that cash flow of whatever the things you're going to purchase. So start with that process and then go from there. And then, once again, going Ramsey, I would probably put my debts in some kind of logical order to make myself feel good and pay them off fast so I get some feeling that I'm accomplishing something there, and then have a debt payment program to get rid of the bad debt that I do have. There's going to be some debt that you may not want to get rid of, and that's perfectly fine, but I guarantee you have some bad debt that you can get rid of if you have to put a plan to it. So
I think that's really smart. I think it's really smart having a plan for your money. And I think this is even more important here in 2023, where was it just last night or yesterday? The Fed announces another interest rate hike.
Quarter point yesterday.
It's a lot more important to stay on top of debt and the strategy around debt whenever interest rates are continually going up. And it's not as easy to go out and grab a truckload of cash at a low rate as it has been maybe in the years past. And so
when money was free from the banks, it's a lot better to borrow. Now it's not as free.
It's not as free, no doubt about it. So make wise decisions about how you're doing it. I think if you take anything away from this podcast, it is have a plan for your money. And if you have that plan, both short term and long term, you may find that debt isn't as necessary for you to accomplish your goals, or you may find that there's some strategic debt that you need to carry at some point in the future. And that's just going to be based up on your own personal philosophy and worldview of debt. We can't decide that for you, but we can give you some different perspectives on how to go about it. So thanks for listening. I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Have a great day. Thanks for listening to the One Step Better podcast. I'd really appreciate it if you would take some time to rate us 5 stars on your podcast player of choice, and make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you never miss out on another episode. Thanks and have a great day.